when we traveled to Panama, I stayed in an Airbnb, and when you go to Airbnb and you look at the pictures, and the place was a nice place. I mean, we have videos of us in the place. It had a nice big huge balcony, covered balcony. The place was amazing. But guess what? In the kitchen they had this gas bottle underneath the cupboard. I couldn't believe it. And that's of course the first thing I look at because I just know better. And these are normally people that grew up with this kind of system, so they don't know any different. So along comes this foreigner and says, oh no, I can't have that. Hey everybody, I'm sorry about this bad news once again, but before we get to that, we're still here in our $300 a month, 3-bedroom, 2-bath apartment in Cuenca, Ecuador. So when I was growing up in Italy, I remember reading in the local papers from time to time some pretty sad stories. One particular story I remember was that of an Italian family waking up dead. What I mean is that, well, they didn't wake up the next morning, and it turned out that it was the gas bottles. Now, Americans generally aren't familiar or used to these gas. These are the large, very large propane gas bottles, and they're extremely prevalent in places like, well, Central America, South America, and even older parts of Europe. Like southern Italy and such. Now here in the newer buildings they have centralized gas, but there have been cases of foreigners, expats, having problems even with that, because even with the centralized gas you've got the gas line coming out of the wall. You don't have the bottle in the house, but you've got the gas line coming out of the wall and it's attached to the gas stove. Well, there was an incident of a lady pushing her stove back or something, and then it made the hose come loose, and the stove blew up in her face and this kind of thing. So I'm saying that Americans aren't familiar with these kind of situations. Now we used to have these bottles, I remember, in Italy, and of course a lot of the accidents happen because in the winter when it's too cold and they just don't want to leave the windows open. So that's a key aspect of dealing with this gas situation. If you think you can just avoid it, I'll tell you something. When we traveled to Panama, I stayed in an Airbnb, and when you go to Airbnb and you look at the pictures, and the place was a nice place. I mean, we have videos of us in the place. It had a nice big huge balcony, covered balcony. The place was amazing. But guess what? In the kitchen they had this gas bottle underneath the cupboard. I couldn't believe it. And that's of course the first thing I look at because I just know better. And these are normally people that grew up with this kind of system, so they don't know any different. So along comes this foreigner and says, oh no, I can't have that. I had to do the same thing in southern Italy. I had to tell the landlord, oh no, I can't keep this bottle in here because I don't, depending on where you're at, in a lot of places you really don't want to keep your doors and windows open overnight because of burglars, And I mean, obviously if you're in a high up place, but even then it's risky. So, but the bottom line is that she wouldn't change it because she would have had to run a line on the floor and go out the balcony with it and all that. She wouldn't do anything about it. So I said, fine, I'm just going to buy an electric double burner and use that. I'm not even going to use the stove. But of course that disqualified me from using the oven, see? But this was, and you go to a place like Panama City and it's generally speaking expected to be built up and everything. But even so, I ran into that situation. And we had the gas bottles here in Cuenca and they were always outside. Tell you that I have a history of being in the States for many, many years and providing home services to people. So I was used to going into their homes, Americans, people's homes, to provide a service. And I don't know where this comes from, but Americans don't like to open windows. I noticed that they would rather keep everything shut and have the air conditioner on instead of, I mean, I understand if it's the middle of the day, it's 100 degrees, but even when it's breezy or whatever, for one reason or another, the majority of Americans that I met are not accustomed to opening their windows. So the point is that it's not just the cooking gas, it's also the heaters. And in a place like Cuenca where it's chilly, and if you're in a house, you're going to be chilly all year. In an apartment, you may be chilly only maybe half the year. It just depends on, various factors. And so a lot of people use these gas heaters. We had a gas heater, but you know what? Not only was our bottle out the door on the porch, the big gas bottle, but and I had to modify the door so that the gas line could fit under it, or the window, and then the gas heater was always next to a window that was always open. And again, Americans aren't really used to this kind of thing. It's a tragedy that they would go abroad to have the expectation of having a great retirement or an adventure, all the reasons why people go abroad, only to end up dead from, propane gas bottles because they didn't understand or know that you need to keep windows and doors open and have a way for that, any kind of leak to escape, and especially carbon monoxide from a heater, because you've got not only the potential for a gas leak from the gas bottle, but you've also got the combustion, the carbon monoxide from the actual burning of the gas that's going on all day and all night. And of course, we never ever kept that on at night either, because for one, we didn't want to keep any windows cracked, because you never know in these kinds of places. I mean, people, prowlers and this kind of thing. So you want to keep everything shut. So if that's the case, then you don't want to keep these heaters on overnight. So it's better to just get an electric blanket for that and just plug it in and you're good to go. I'm sorry to hear these kinds of things happen. I know that with here in our own household, I know how unfamiliar Americans are with gas appliances, and Angie and gas stoves don't really get along either. So a lot of the gas stoves I remember were giveaways. You see them, people give them away. People don't like to fuss with gas stoves there. But things are changing here, and there's a lot of conversion back to electric stoves and that kind of thing. Yet this just recently happened. And it's because no matter how much conversion there is, as I said, we went to a fairly modern apartment in Panama City, and yet they had never changed over from that gas system. But I always warned people here when we used to help people find apartments, and I always used to tell them, and I'm just glad that I'm able to make a video to warn people about these kinds of situations, because oftentimes expats aren't familiar and retirees aren't familiar, and they end up in a situation like this couple. So I hope I've helped you understand how to be more careful in your retire early lifestyle about these little things that maybe aren't very well known and discussed. Thanks for watching the video, and have a nice day.